Coming back to Swaziland to continue my studies did not happen the way I had hoped. I stayed there for a short time, but protests and riots suddenly broke out in the area where I was living. Many families from different countries were staying there, and a lot of people were arrested. By the grace of Allah, I was not one of them. From that day, I made a firm decision. I decided to leave Swaziland for good. A few days later, I left. As usual, I had no legal documents. The border on both sides was not difficult to cross. I entered South Africa easily, walking through bushland, hoping to reach the main road and catch a vehicle from there. The land was wild and quiet. As I walked along a narrow path, I suddenly saw a police officer standing not far from me. Out of fear, I quickly threw myself behind a tree on my left. The place was very thick with bushes. As I lay there, I suddenly saw a huge snake lying right above me. The snake moved sharply toward me. At that moment, my fear of the snake was greater than my fear of the police officer. I watched the snake slowly crawl away. I was extremely lucky. Allah saved me. Quietly, I ran deeper into the bush until I reached the main busy road. I managed to catch a vehicle and arrived in the town of Nelspruit in the late afternoon. At the bus station, I asked a driver if his bus was going to Johannesburg. Yes, he said. It took some time for him to collect enough passengers. Finally, we left as the sun was setting. Around 9 p.m., we arrived in a small town where everyone got off. I asked people, "Is this Johannesburg?" They replied, "No." I went to the driver and asked him what happened. "Didn't you say you were going to Johannesburg?" He answered, "No, I'm not going there. This is my country." I was shocked and angry. I couldn't believe what had happened, but there was nothing I could do. Many black South Africans are not very understanding, and violence is not something unusual. Knowing this, I quietly walked away. I found another bus heading to Johannesburg. This time I did not trust the driver easily. I made sure it was really going there. I asked him how much the fare was.
"Sorry, 20, he said. "I only had our 1950.
I explained my situation and what had happened to me earlier. He said okay and accepted the money I had. Again, we waited a long time to get enough passengers. Finally, we left, and around 1:30 a.m. we arrived in Johannesburg. Unfortunately, I had forgotten the address of the place where I was staying in Doornfontein. The only thing I remembered was that there was a Standard Bank nearby. When I got off the bus in the center of Johannesburg, it was Saturday morning. The streets were full of people coming out of clubs, many of them drunk and standing everywhere. I got into a taxi. "What is your address?" the driver asked. I said, "Standard Bank." He looked surprised and said, "My friend, which Standard Bank?" I replied, "Don't you know the city?" At that time I thought I was right, but he was actually right. He explained, "Standard Bank is everywhere in Johannesburg. In Kenya or Somalia, banks usually have only one main branch in a city, and everyone knows its location. But in South Africa, every neighborhood has its own branch." Still, I insisted he take me to Standard Bank. We stopped at one just around the corner. "This is Standard Bank," he said. "Is this where you are going?" "No," I replied, "this is not it. How many Standard Banks do you think are in Johannesburg?" He asked. "There are too many, my friend." By then I was in trouble. I didn't know the address. I had no money left, but I didn't tell him that. We kept driving around with no clear direction. Sometimes I would see women who looked Somali. When I saw them, I felt hopeful. "Stop the car," I would say. I would call out, "Abyo," meaning sister. Some would respond in English, some would say mama, but none were Somali. Finally, another older man who was also a taxi driver noticed me. The meter had already passed R80. The old driver started talking to me. I told him I had come from Somalia. "Luckily," he said, "I think I know people like you who might be living in a certain area." I became very happy and asked him to take me there. When we arrived, I recognized the place immediately. It was the Doornfontein neighborhood where I used to live. I was overjoyed. I told him to wait while I went to get the money. I knocked on the door and was welcomed inside. I borrowed money from someone in the house and went back to pay the taxi driver. That moment was one of the many hardships I experienced during my journey.